This podcast is made possible by listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's April 14th, 2025. On this day in 1823, a court in Franklin convicted a teenager named John Murrell of riot. Now, we don't actually know much about that riot, but he was found guilty of stealing a horse. They branded his left thumb with the letters HT for horse thief. They kept him in prison for 6 years, and the experience definitely did not scare him straight. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. And if you ever find yourself fascinated by the true crime of today, well, 200 years ago, that teenage horse thief in Franklin became one of the more notorious Southern criminals of the early 19th century. Let me put it like this. If John Murrell were to get the modern treatment, his investigation Dateline or Netflix docuseries would need a bunch of episodes. Now, there's a chance you have heard something about him without knowing it. In Mark Twain's The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Tom and Huck Finn find a treasure that they believe once belonged to Murrell. Eudora Welty named a highwayman character for him in one of her short stories. William Faulkner mentions him. He shows up as a character in a 1940 Western, several other novels. His name has somehow been mostly forgotten, but when I say he was notorious, I really mean it. And that notoriety lasted more than a century. His reputation, though, was a curious mix of fact and fiction that's often hard to separate. Murrell definitely robbed people. He was accused of killing people. Up and down the Natchez Trace and along the Mississippi River, folks called him the Great Western Land Pirate. And it was said that throughout that area, he had clusters of gangs all answering his beck and call and helping to carry out his nefarious deeds. One of the stories that circulated about him later, thank you very much, Mark Twain, said that he would pose as a traveling preacher, drawing a crowd to speak at a church. Everyone would tie their horses up outside while he delivered a fiery sermon. And when it was over, they'd come outside to find the only horse still there was his. Maybe if they'd looked more closely at his hands while he'd preached, they would have seen that horse thief brand. But taking animals and money wasn't enough for Murrell. His gangs, which he liked to call the Mystic Clan, also took people. And this part of his story is much darker than what was usually retold in the pop culture versions of his character. Now, given that this was the South in the 1830s, I doubt you'd be surprised to hear that this scheme took advantage of black people in an ugly way. Murrell and members of the Klan would coerce an enslaved person into being stolen by them under the pretense that it would all be a farce. They'd say they were actually going to help the person, that it was really the first step in an escape to the North. But along the way, they claimed they needed to put on a show of selling the person at a slave market, then another staged kidnapping, and another sale at a market. In actuality, the group would pocket the proceeds and repeat the process as many times as possible before the enslaved person gave up agreeing to be stolen by them. That part of the story is true, by the way. Less probable is what got more press at the time. People claimed the group was fanning the flames of a slave uprising because Murrell was convinced he could profit from the chaos. And honestly, the historical record on things like that is really murky and hard to sort through. It's complicated by the fact that white Southerners of his era were both terrified by and obsessed with the idea of enslaved people upending the system in a violent fashion. There were always rumors of uprisings. A huge wave of concern was triggered by Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831. But the ripple effects from that very real event became associated with the Mystic Clan and were nicknamed Murrell Excitement. Rumors even spread that he had set a date. Some kind of revolt was supposed to take place on Christmas Day, 1835. Where exactly? Who knew? Everywhere, maybe. Or no, it was definitely supposed to happen in New Orleans, and when it did, he was going to take over the city like some kind of criminal warlord. And people took this stuff seriously. In July of that year, disturbances in the red light districts of Nashville, Memphis, and Natchez, Mississippi were tied to Murrell's gangs. Cities like Huntsville and New Orleans took official action to try to root out the Mystic Clan and stop them from riling things up. Across the South, somewhere between 30 and 50 people, many of them black, were arrested, coerced into confessing some kind of involvement, and executed by hanging. It was kind of like the Salem witch trials, but with a Southern accent. Now, by the time all of this reached a fever pitch, Murrell was actually behind bars again. He got caught in 1834 for that nonsense where he repeatedly manipulated enslaved people and subjected them to who knows what levels of harm through being sold again. He was convicted on charges that, of course, focused on the loss of property incurred by the white owners. For that crime, he was sent to the Tennessee State Penitentiary, which at that time was just outside of downtown Nashville, on Charlotte, roughly where Jack's Barbecue is now. Murrell served 10 years there. He was made to work as a blacksmith, and he reportedly died 9 months after his release. But of course, the stories didn't end there. People still claimed he was roving around with gangs of wild criminals. And at some point, someone's grave was robbed that people said was his, and body parts were separated and circulated around the region as strange relics. One of them, a thumb, is in the collection of the Tennessee State Museum. It appears to be mummified, but it does not have the horse thief brand that the Franklin court ordered for Murrell. In just a few minutes, we'll take a look at how the Lower Broad Tourism District is dealing with drug overdoses. That's coming up after the newscast.
We know that local government isn't the only part of your life.
Like the mayor, I know that city government isn't the only thing you're concerned with.
We are still struggling to find affordable housing.
They're taking over this bus stop.
That's one of the unique challenges with my business.
I'm WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams. I'm working to break down topics like transit, housing, and local government to make sure that when you are thinking about Metro, you're getting the full story. Follow my latest stories at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. A powerful tornado in West Tennessee caused about $30 million in damage. About 2 weeks ago, an EF3 tornado carved a path through more than 40 miles of land between McNairy and Hardin counties. The damages to homes and businesses will cost about $27 million to repair, according to a preliminary report from the local emergency management agency. The tornado also caused about $3 million worth of damage to public property, roads, and utilities. 9 students are now at risk of deportation at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. The immigration statuses of these students suddenly changed, and officials revoked their student or work visas. The university has not released details about whether the students have left campus or the country, according to the Knoxville News Sentinel. Meanwhile, the Tennessean reports 6 international students at Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro have had their visas revoked. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the Immigration Office, accessed a database with the students' information and changed their immigration status. About 1,000 international students across the nation have had a change in their immigration status in recent weeks. A bill at the State House this year aimed to separate dangerous people from their guns in hopes of protecting domestic violence victims. WPLN's Paige Flager reports that the 2 Republican sponsors of the bill were surprised by opposition from the National Rifle Association, which pushed the legislation to next year.
The legislation was inspired by WPLN and ProPublica's reporting in rural Scott County. The court system there requires a person who's ordered to give up their guns to identify who they're giving them to. It may seem like a minor administrative change, but Tennessee is one of few states that allows someone under a court order to give their guns to a third party without any confirmation. Advocates say that leaves domestic violence victims vulnerable.
I thought it was just a dunk, to tell you the truth. I just didn't see this coming. Totally did not.
That's Republican Representative Kelly Kiesling, who co-sponsored the bill. Kiesling represents Scott County and has seen the impact of the changes to the court system there. He's also a member of the NRA and the Tennessee Firearms Association. Both groups oppose the bill.
I am going to reach out to both organizations or associations, I should say, and just say, hey, is there anything that we can do without jeopardizing the true intent of this?
Kiesling says he wants to keep trying to bring Scott County's gun dispossession process to the rest of the state next year. Paige Flager, WPLN News.
The Rutherford County Library System is banning all books that mention transgender people, and Sumner County Library could soon follow suit. Several First Amendment organizations publicly oppose the policies, including the Pennsylvania-based Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Its advocacy director, Aaron Turr, told the Tennessean the new ban goes further than others he's seen. Rather than ban books for certain age groups, this policy bans books for all readers. In Sumner County on Wednesday, the policy was set to be voted on at a board meeting, but the meeting was canceled at the last minute due to lack of a quorum. A battery factory under construction in Clarksville will suffer financial losses due to new tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. LG Chem plans to process cathode materials for the creation of batteries in electric vehicles. The company made a $3.2 billion economic deal for its factory, which is considered the largest single investment by a foreign company in Tennessee. The Nashville Business Journal reports LG Chem says Trump's steel tariffs are impacting its purchases of machinery and equipment. A company official told the Business Journal that none of it can be bought in America. At least 100 performers are making their Grand Ole Opry debuts this year as part of the show's centennial celebration. Musical country comic Danae Hayes was one of them. Senior music writer Julie Height was there.
Danae Hayes was prepared to enjoy the rituals that come with appearing on the Opry for the first time, beginning with the special plaque marking her parking spot behind the Opry House.
Here and I was like, guys, I'm so pumped. We got a debut parking spot. And then I peeked my head around the corner and I was like, oh my God, these people are parked in my freaking parking. That is the most comedian thing to happen at the Grand Ole Opry, though.
Hayes gently pushes the boundaries of country comedy. She blew up on TikTok with redneck prank calls, colorful characters, and country songs with absurd punchlines, often with language you can't use on the radio. But she also sees herself as part of the Opry's long comedic lineage. She chose a bright red Western suit as her debut outfit to make that point, modeling it on one that Southern yarn spinner Jerry Clower used to wear on the show back in the 70s.
Jerry was a heavy-set guy. He was a big fellow. And so I was like, I hope my suit looks as good on me as it does on him as a woman that's a little thinner. But I think we nailed it, dude.
It went over well, and so did Hayes' slightly toned-down set. But she did joke from the Opry stage that she was doing material her dad advised her not to. Her appearance was a reminder that both she and the Opry please audiences by respecting tradition, but also bending it a little. Julie Height, WPLN.
TCAP standardized testing begins today. Tennessee students in grades 3 through 8 must show their skills in various subjects like reading, language arts, science, math, and social studies. It's one of the country's most difficult exams and comes with high stakes for Tennessee third graders in particular. A state law passed in 2021 requires students who don't do well enough on the English language arts section to go to summer school, enroll in tutoring, or both. They could even be held back from starting fourth grade. Critics of the state law say the test isn't focused enough. It doesn't just measure reading, it also judges grammar, syntax, and punctuation. Metro schools say students are on track to improve their TCAP scores this year. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Tennessee ranks second in the nation for overdose deaths. But in Nashville, it's not just affecting people with opioid use disorder. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney, in partnership with the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, has more on harm reduction efforts in the city's tourism district.
Classic turn-of-the-century brick buildings line Broadway and downtown Nashville. Through the giant windows, you can see rows of expensive cowboy boots, or candy displays, or intricate shot glasses. But mostly, you can hear the music floating out of venues like Acme Feed and Seed. Lauren Morales worked with Acme since it opened in 2014 and says the nightlife scene has grown rapidly since then.
I think there were only maybe a dozen bars on Broadway. And then it was already changing so fast, and then the pandemic really accelerated it. We attracted just a lot of tourists during that post-get-out-of-the-house time.
The city's tourism industry has exploded over the past few years. It now draws about 17 million people annually. All the while, Tennessee has ranked among the top 3 states in the nation for overdose deaths. Overdose rates are especially high for young people.
Obviously, there is a link between partying and having fun and the potential for a mistake. When we saw there was a way that we could safely participate in the solution, immediately we wanted to.
Acme is one of nearly 100 bars and venues in the area that has overdose reversal boxes installed. They look like first aid kits.
You will insert this into the nostril as you
But
aim
they
the
also
tip
have
towards
video
the ear.
instructions on how to use the equipment, including the overdose reversal medication, naloxone.
I don't want to sound like the harbinger of doom, but it is very bad in the city of Nashville, the overdose epidemic.
That's Sergeant Mike Hotz, who heads up the police department's overdose response unit. He says more than 5,000 people a year suffer from non-fatal overdoses in the city.
We do see a disproportionate amount of people suffering from both fatal and non-fatal overdoses in the entertainment district. We've had a handful of tourists pass away, unfortunately.
He says this area has a bit of a different problem from other hotspots. People who think they're buying recreational drugs like cocaine may unknowingly use a laced product.
I would say when it comes to the tourists more specifically, they're most likely somebody who is not suffering from opioid use disorder, and they ingested something that they didn't know was fentanyl.
That's when his unit started trying to get harm reduction supplies into businesses in the area, but it was a slow start.
I'm not joking when I say this, I had 0% success.
Around the same time, Nashville created a director of nightlife position. It's a liaison between businesses and the city government. That office, police, city council, and the charity arm of Gibson Guitars have spent about a year building out the program. They use a kit called One Box. Dr. Susan Margaret Murphy is the president of the Drug Intervention Institute, headquartered in Charleston, West Virginia. They sell the kits, which Murphy and her husband created.
The project in Nashville really sparked a nationwide distribution. We have about 18,000 boxes out in all 50 states now, with reports of 300 lives saved.
The collaborative is now working with teams like the Tennessee Titans to get One Boxes into Nashville's stadiums and arenas. For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, I'm Catherine Sweeney.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.